Welcome to St. Pierre. My name is Gareth. Hope I'm the executive chef here. I've worked for this hotel for 1.5 years. I've worked for Marriott hotels for almost 20 years. Currently here we've got 2 restaurants. We've got a function room. We do weddings, we do banquets, we do functions. We do golf events, we do all sorts. Today we're cooking a nice free-range chicken breast with butternut squash and celeriac terrine. I've got a nice shallot tata with a very nice blackberry jus. Very seasonal. We've got some great flavours coming through from the butternut squash and the celeriac, and some fantastic blackberries going through a jus and some fresh blackberries to garnish. I love about cooking, I love everything about it. I love the pressure of it. I love working with new ingredients, working with people who find new things to do with food, things that I wouldn't have thought about. I love the versatility of everything about it. I love the pressure and the speed of and the pace of working in the kitchen. I went to Neath Talbot College back in 2002. I worked under Wynne and Fran Edwards many years ago. I did my BTEC National Diploma there about 16 years ago. Which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think it was a very important part of my life. It gave me the basic foundations of going into the industry, and taught me a lot that I wouldn't have learned in a workplace. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is get on my terrine. Okay, so I'm going to make a pressed terrine. I'm going to make a butternut squash and a celeriac terrine that usually we would press overnight with shape up nice and rectangular, which I'll show you afterwards. But for the time being, I'm going to show you how to get the flavours involved and how to make a set terrine. It's very similar to a dauphinoise potatoes or a bolognese potatoes. However, I'm going to be using celeriac and some butternut squash and a little bit of potato. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to slice my potatoes, I'm going to slice my butternut squash and my celeriac. I've got a bit of butter, I've got some chicken stock and a little bit of jus involved there, and some thyme. So throughout the whole dish, there is a pattern of lots of butter, lots of thyme, lots of garlic. So you should be able to taste it in a few different aspects of the dish. So what I'm doing, you can use a mandolin for this. A Japanese mandolin is ideal. They are very sharp and very dangerous, so please be careful if you are. However, I like to use my knife just to make sure that my skills are nice and up to date. I learned these skills in college, and then straight after college, or whilst I was studying in college, I was still working in the Swansea Marriott. And then it's just practice. The more you do it, the better you get. The more you focus and the more you concentrate, the more efficient you'll be. But it's just practice, as with everything. So this is my celeriac. I've got celeriac and butternut squash, which for this time of year now are bang in season. And I love working with celeriac. It's a very flavorful vegetable if you've never tried it. I tend to think it's a very sweet flavored celery. There's bags of flavor and it makes an amazing puree. And it's very versatile. You can use it in all sorts of dishes. Okay, so these are my sliced vegetables. I use the potato. I don't want to use too much potato, but I like to have the starch coming out of the potato. It helps stick everything together if you're going to press it afterwards, and give it a bit of substance. So this is the dish that I'm going to use today. As I'll explain later on, I've done another one, which is a pressed one, but that takes much longer than what you're going to be doing. So I've got my nice little ramekin here. I'm going to take a little bit of butter. And I'm just going to grease the dish. When the pan heats up, this will caramelize all the outside of it, add bags of flavor to it, and help with the cooking process. So what I've got my ramekin, I've got my vessel if you like, I've got the butternut squash, I've got the celeriac and potato, I've got some picked thyme leaves here, and have some salt and pepper. So before I go anywhere, I want to make sure that this is quite evenly seasoned, and some picked thyme leaves. So I'm going to take some potatoes. Now, you don't have to be too delicate with this. I'm not going to individually layer it. It's going to be more of a pot afterwards, quite rustic looking. But like I've said before, I'm going to show you a bit more of a presentable way of making it afterwards. So I'm just going to layer it, butternut squash, potato, celeriac, and then that again. Get some of the thyme leaves in between. I won't worry too much about the shapes and the sizes. We're going to put some chicken stock and some jus inside it as well. The jus that we make is a fantastic flavour to it. I'll go through that afterwards. They're fantastic sauces and they're great for a base sauce and very versatile if you know how to use them. So I'm going to put a little bit of chicken stock. Not quite all the way to the top, but if you push down, you'll gently see it. And then quite a generous knob of butter. Okay, so what we've got is very finely sliced butternut squash, celeriac and some potato, some thyme, some butter, some chicken stock, and I've got a little bit of jus reduction into the chicken stock as well, just for flavour. I'm going to put this in the rationale, 170 for about 25 to 30 minutes. I usually cover it, but we'll see how we're doing after 10 minutes, see how much colour it's getting on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is make the tata. So I've got a very beautiful shallot here. It's a banana shallot. I peeled it already. I'm going to take most of the stalk off. Okay, so if you can see there, I've left a little bit of the stalk on. That's going to help it stick together when it's cooking, and keep it as one piece, because I don't want it to be falling all over the place. I've also cut almost like a cheek off it, so I haven't necessarily cut it in half. It's going to stay together and it won't open up when it's cooking. Yeah. So in the pan, I've got a little bit of garlic, as you can see, a little bit of thyme, as you can see. A little bit of oil to stop the butter burning, and then I'm just going to colour off the shallot in the pan. Just get a little bit of colour on the bottom mainly, toss it over, baste it a little bit with a bit of butter, and then we're going to wrap it in puff pastry. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I've got my my puff pastry here, nicely browned shallots. See if we can get a bit of colour on there. Okay, so that's nice and coloured on the bottom. I'm going to take my puff pastry, I'm going to push it out a little bit and just very gently stretch it a little bit. Now when you're using puff pastry, you want to try and use it at room temperature so that the butter inside the puff pastry isn't too firm and solidifying. So I'm going to wrap my shallot with the puff pastry. Be very careful because the pan is very hot. Here's that garlic. Nice and round it. Try and tuck it into the bottom. Okay. A little bit of egg wash. Now what I've done with my egg wash, I've got one egg and one yolk. The yolk gives a bit of a richer colour. The egg yolk will glaze the pastry and give it a really nice finish to it, and also seal the puff pastry as well. But what I'm going to do is with a knife, just make a couple of scores there, and when it comes out of the oven, then it'll be nicely coloured and nicely scored. This is my tata. This is going to go into the oven probably around another 11 to 12 minutes. 160, that'll be fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is cook my chicken breast. Obviously I'm using a red board for raw meat. This is our free-range chicken breast. I've trimmed it back, I've taken some of the excess fat off it, and I've scored the skin a little bit, okay? So obviously it's on a red board. We use a red board for raw meat just to make sure we can differentiate the different uses of the boards, make sure there's no cross-contamination involved, and make sure everyone's nice and healthy when they're eating their food, okay? So I've got my chicken. I'm going to season the chicken quite well with salt, cracked black pepper. I've allowed the chicken to come to room temperature so that it cooks a bit more evenly in the oven. And again, when I'm cooking it, I'm going to infuse the oil a little bit. And then afterwards, I'm going to put more garlic, more thyme inside it, so we get that flavour throughout. A nice hot pan. I put oil in the pan again, like I said, with a shallot, so that the butter doesn't burn. Skin side down. I'm looking for a really nice colour on that skin, okay? I'm going to render the fat down in the chicken and the skin, so that when we cook it in the oven, it's going to take about 15 minutes to cook in the oven. When it comes out of the oven, we've got a nice golden finish on it. I'm going to seal the chicken all around on the outside, just to make sure that when it cooks, all the juices are inside and it distributes, and we don't lose any of the flavour or the juice from the chicken. Okay, so this will go in the oven. About 14 minutes in the oven, 170, should be good. Okay, so local produce is very important to myself. British foods, English lamb, Welsh lamb, English beef and local beef is massive for me. I'm a great fan of Gower lamb, salt marsh lamb. When it's in season, it's the best lamb money can buy, and I love cooking with it. You know, a Welsh cow with some Gower salt marsh lamb is fantastic. I love the old school French chefs. I love Michel Roux Jr. I love Raymond Blanc. One, because their food is fantastic, but I also love their energy in the kitchen. I love how they talk to people, how they express themselves, and the passion for food is just fantastic. It's something I like to aspire to be, and how I like to think I work in the kitchen with a bit of energy and a bit of enthusiasm and a bit of enjoyment for what you do. I love working with seasonal foods. I love the celeriac, the butternut squash, the blackberries. You know, they're very much coming to the end of the season, and blackberry picking's kind of out the window very shortly, but they're still pretty good at this time of year. And with chicken, I love working with butter, garlic, shallots, and thyme. You know, that's a winning combination and has made fantastic dishes through the years. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit of foil over it just to help it cook on the inside and make sure it doesn't burn on the outside. Back onto the stove on a gentle heat, a little bit of butter, extra thyme, extra garlic. Okay, so that's going to rest for 5 minutes. When we rest the meat, the meat's been cooking in the oven for about 15 minutes now, and it's quite tight, and you want it to relax a little bit. Now that we sealed the outside of it, and the skin's nice and crispy, and the outside is keeping all the moisture in, when you rest the meat, it relaxes a little bit. But then because it's sealed on the outside, the juices redistribute back through the chicken. If I was to slice that chicken in half now, the juices would come out. They'd exit the chicken, and that's all the flavor that you're losing. But I want to keep that flavor. I'm going to leave that for about 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and that way that all the flavor stays inside it. So this is our red wine jus that we make in-house. This here, as you can see, there's a massive shine to it. Now what I like to use in my jus is a lot of gelatinous parts of the animal. So we use chicken wings, we use split marrow bones, and we use calves feet as well as veal bones and beef bones. So we roast those over about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, get a really good color on them, get some tomato puree in there, roast that and cook that off a little bit. And then we'll simmer that with some roasted vegetables, some onions, some celery, some leeks, some carrots. No herbs at this stage, quite a lot of garlic, and then we'll simmer that for about 2 days. You'll get a really good rich color from it. We'll skim it a lot to get rid of the fat. We'll use the fat in other areas of the kitchen, and that'll happen for about 2 days. Once you've got a really rich color on there, we skim it, we take all of the bones out, and then we just start reducing. We put a lot of red wine in there. That's the stage that we'd put thyme and rosemary in there. A little bit of port, and then we just reduce that right down, and then you get a very rich, smooth, gelatinous sauce like this. Reducing would be just to boil a lot of the liquid away, so that you're left with all of the bone marrow and the flavor from the bones and the garlic and the root vegetables. What we're going to do with this, I've got some just roughly chopped blackberries. I'm going to add the blackberries to the jus. I don't want to cook this too much. I just want to smash it up a little bit. Now, all I want to do is use the flavor from the blackberries to flavor the jus, okay? So this is our base sauce. I got a little bit of rosemary in there. And then the flavor of the blackberries is just going to go through the jus very nicely. I'm not going to bring this to a boil. I'm just going to let that warm through. I don't want to break down the blackberries too much. What I've got to garnish it with here is I've got some crispy kale that I've literally just deep fried and tossed in some salt. I've got some petals from some shallots where I've just put in a dry pan, and then I've just cooked and I've just burned the outside of it. Like I said before, I want shallots, I want thyme, I want garlic, I want butter going through the whole dish, and that's just a small garnish afterwards. I've got my pressed terrine, so this is slightly different to what I made earlier. This is what I made yesterday, so exactly the same way, but what we've done, we've cooked it and then we pushed it down and pressed it overnight. And then there's our shallot tartare. Start off with the chicken. I'm going to top and tail it. A butternut squash tray. tata. Okay, and this is our jus. So these are a couple of the fresh blackberries. And then just a little bit of the crispy kale to finish it off. When I play up, I like to play up nice and clean. I don't like an enormous amount of ingredients on the plate, and I want to make sure that everything that is on the plate is edible. You know, you get a lot of trimmed chickens, trimmed lambs. I'll take a cannon of lamb over a rack of lamb 7 days a week. You know, it's nice to look at a nice trimmed piece of chicken breast. There we have it. This is my free-range chicken with shallot tartatan, butternut squash, and celeriac terrine, with some shallot peels and some crispy kale.